Title Screen Energy 101. Yeah, we're good? Okay,
We can see it.
awesome.
Good.
Okay, so this conversation, I'm really excited to share with you all. The art and science of self-care, patient care, and community health. This is really a discussion of understanding what I like to call energy. And I want to just be very clear that this is not just about healthcare and self-care, but this conversation is really going to help you, kind of have this, another piece in the puzzle of life. And this is going to really help you wherever you happen to be on your journey of life. Either you are a very scientific minded individual or a very spiritual person. I think you're going to find relevance to you and where you happen to be in life. Now, this is a graph just to show you the amount of data that has been coming out in peer-reviewed journal articles over the last number of decades. And I want you just to appreciate this is just looking at mindfulness. One single mental exercise in a whole vast, variety of different mental exercises that not only builds resilience, but it helps, you self-regulate. And if you look from the year 2000 to 2018, there's just been this exponential increase. So all we can really do today is really, just scratch the surface. But I want to just identify a few very key and interesting, kind of research and clinical research results. So for instance, a study of 5,716 middle-aged people, those with the highest self-regulation abilities were over 50 times more likely to be alive and without chronic disease 15 years later compared to those with the lowest self-regulation scores. This is profound. This is a real, when we start thinking about, how emotions affect our health and well-being, this is a real paradigm shift. We knew it was, somewhat involved, but we're starting to really grasp how profound our thoughts and emotions affect our health. In fact, in another meta-analysis, not one, but three separate 10-year studies concluded that emotional stress was more predictive of death from cancer and cardiovascular disease compared to smoking. It further went on to identify that people who are unable to effectively manage their stress have a 40% higher death rate than non-stressed individuals. So what we're going to be talking about today, this is huge. This is really a huge, perspective when it comes to health and wellness, and really is, a new chapter when we start thinking about the science of wellness, how to be more proactive and preventative in our health. Now, a scary statistic is that 60 to 80% of primary doctor visits are related to stress, yet only 3% of patients receive stress management. That's a huge gap. It's huge. And you know why that is? It's because the Canadian Medical Association Journal in May 2019, before the COVID pandemic, identified that suicide is the only cause of mortality that is higher in physicians than non-physicians. In males, it's over 40%, and in females, it's actually more than double. The fact is that we have not, as a healthcare community, we have not studied the science of wellness, how to self-regulate, and more so, the system itself is not designed in a way that allows us to really incorporate these strategies into the way that we not only self-care, but provide care. Now, before we go any deeper, let me just briefly introduce myself. And Aaron had mentioned, I'm a medical doctor, I'm a radiologist. In my very first year of medical practice, I found out I had a heart condition, hypertrophic obstructive cardiomyopathy. So I needed open heart surgery. And then as I came back to work, I was then appointed as a chief of the radiology department in the hospital I worked at. Now, very quickly, as you can imagine, I got to experience the entire model of care from the bottom up and top down, and I realized very quickly that our system is very outdated. It's antiquated, and more concerning is how we define and study health and wellness within our Western medical model is extremely narrow in scope. The biomedical model suggests that we are literally, just a composite of our physical parts. Now, it was at this point I became very disillusioned, and I wanted to, look at how other cultures approached health and wellness. I started traveling, and I took a real interest in India. And I started studying their, mind, body, spiritual perspective. The three pillars of health and wellness: mind, body, and spirit. And that spirit, that pillar, the spiritual sciences, is something that I found was like an enigma. It was something that we don't study in Western medicine. And what I found most interesting is that many of these swamis and these spiritual practitioners that I had opportunities to meet, learn from, practice with, many of them had such a profound understanding in science, particularly physics. And in fact, some of them had physics degrees. And it bewildered me as to why in the world would, these spiritual masters sitting in the Himalayas have any interest in physics, let alone degrees. And it was explained to me that everything is energy. Everything. Even your thoughts, your emotions, these are forms of energy. And hence, the more that you understand energy, the more that you understand your thoughts, your emotions, your consciousness, and now you can use them as tools for health and wellness. Now, this was a light bulb moment for me because my field of medicine, radiology, we do not use prescription pads. We don't use scalpel blades. We use energy to non-invasively dissect the human body like a loaf of bread, right? We look through people's brain. We look through the livers, the kidneys. We can fly through blood vessels, all because we have such a profound understanding of the laws of physics. Now, just to give you an idea of, the far extreme when we think about energy, you, me, we are all energetic beings. You are a massive superorganism. You're made up of, approximately 50 trillion cells. And in fact, you are at least 2 to 10 times more bacteria than you are you. But needless to say, the 50 trillion cells that you are, those cells are made of molecules. Those molecules are made of atoms. Those atoms are made of even smaller subatomic particles that are flickering. They flicker between energy and what we call matter. The fact of the matter is, an atom is 99.99999% space. It's vacuum. We are energetic vibrations. Now you might think, well, this is interesting, but really irrelevant to your health and wellness. But I would argue that it's not, because this is exactly why we can, image, why we can have an MRI scan, why we have CAT scans. So now the interesting aspect is when we understand energy from this Western lens, we can also begin to understand how in the ancient scriptures and the wisdom of the East, the spiritual sciences, they also discuss energy, and it's the same energy. So what we're going to do today is really help identify energy in this new framework through the Western lens and an Eastern perspective. Now, I use a piece of art to help people understand this intersection between science and spirituality, okay? This is called a medicinal mandala, and I just want to take a second to explain it because this is going to change your life. The centerpiece, what Einstein is staring at, this is called a vector equilibrium. The vector equilibrium in this medicinal mandala represents all of the Western science, Western technology, the hard sciences. And that vector equilibrium is actually a representation of a perfectly balanced system of energy. Okay? This is such an important diagram. It's actually related to the 1996 Nobel Prize in Chemistry. Okay? Now, His Holiness the Dalai Lama is staring at the background flower. This is a lotus flower. This has represented the spiritual sciences, our interconnection, the science of mind, the science of consciousness. And it's been found in scriptures and ancient art for thousands of years, particularly in the East. And it's always represented the spiritual science. Now, Can everyone appreciate that when you superimpose these two diagrams, the vector and the lotus, do you notice how they flow into each other? They occupy the same space. The reason why is because there's a very specific energetic frequency, a mathematical pattern that they both share. And we're going to tune in to that mathematical frequency, that pattern. So before we go any further, if there's one thing that I want you to take away from this talk is I want you to learn at least one single exercise of how to tune into this energy. There's energy flowing all around us and is flowing through you. And so what I want to do right now is just go through a very specific, very simple protocol. I call it the laser protocol, okay? It stands for the 3 phases. You first lock on to energy, you then synchronize this energy, and then you radiate and receive this energy. This is a very powerful mental exercise that you can learn, you become acquainted with it, you can use it at any point. You don't have to sit in the corner, with your eyes closed, for 5, 10, or 20 minutes. You can use this in any, difficult, challenging moment, particularly when you get acquainted with this exercise. And it will help you maintain your focus, concentration, your attention. It will charge up your resilience. This is an amazing exercise. And we'll talk more about the science and we'll explain it afterwards, but let's just practice it together for 2 minutes, okay? So this is how it works. The first phase, lock on. We lock on to energy using 3 breaths. The first breath, you're going to take a nice inhale through your nose, and you're going to focus all of your concentration on the body sensation as the air is rushing in through your nostrils. You exhale, again through your nose, focusing all of your concentration, all of your awareness on the sensation of breath. And just start becoming aware of, whatever sensations you may experience. You may even, experience that the exhalation air is a little warmer than when you inhale. Just the subtleties, you become aware of them. So that's your first breath. You're activating your internal sensors. Second breath, you again inhale through your nose. As you exhale, you imagine a bright light starting from the crown of your head, scanning your entire body down to the tips of your toes. You're just bringing your awareness to the body sensations as the light scans your system. You can consider it like a body scan. Your third breath, again, breathe in through the nose, focusing on the sensation of your breath. And as you exhale, you're now going to lock onto your heart by imagining that you're exhaling through your heart. You imagine your breath exhaling through your heart space. Now, from this point on, all you do is you stay focused, your focused awareness on the sensation in your heart. This is how we synchronize. Now that you're locked onto the energy in your heart, you're now just going to maintain focused awareness in and around the heart. Whatever sensations that you become aware of, just appreciate it. Sit there with patience and curiosity and just become aware of whatever sensations in the heart space that you will experience. Now, be aware that there is a very powerful energetic focus within the heart, almost like a fountain of light. This light is pure love, pure divine frequency, and the more that you become connected to the heart sensations, you're actually synchronizing with that light, okay? The same light in your heart is in my heart and everybody else's heart, and it's really what is connecting all of us. So as you synchronize to your own light, you're also synchronizing to everybody else's. But we'll talk more about the science a little bit. Now, when you feel ready, once you become synchronized and you feel grounded, then you can move on to the third and last phase called Radiate and Receive. Very simple. With every exhalation, you imagine radiating the light from your heart, and when you inhale, you just give yourself permission to receive the light right back to the heart, right back to the source. In the beginning, you're imagining the light bathing your entire body, bathing every single cell in your body. And eventually you can imagine the light extending beyond the physical boundaries of your body, sending it to the hearts of your loved ones, sending light to your friends and family, perhaps your community, your neighborhood, could be your city, your state, even the world. And remember, with every inhale, You just allow yourself to receive that energy right back to your heart. And it's that simple. A very simple stepwise approach. For any of you, if meditation is new, this is a great way that you can practice simple, effective 3 steps, 3 phases. And, if you are a seasoned meditator, this is just one more tool you can put in your toolkit and you can use at any point during challenging moments. Now, let's just take a moment and I'll help guide you into a state of coherence. We'll just practice for like a minute, okay? So wherever you happen to be, as long as you're safe, you're not driving, just take a moment, sit, rest your eyes, just settle into your body and the stillness of your body, and begin now. Take a nice breath in through your nose, and just exhale again through your nose, focusing on the sensation of breath. Take your second breath in. As you exhale, imagine a bright light from the crown of your head scanning your entire body as you awaken to the internal sensations. Take your third breath in. Now exhale through your heart space and lock onto your heart. Now maintain focused awareness in and around your heart. And just stay aware of whatever sensations that you may begin to experience. You can imagine your breath beginning to flow through your heart space. And as you deepen that connection to your heart, become aware of that fountain of light, the fountain of love, this divine energy. Imagine the light growing brighter, growing warmer with every breath. If your mind begins to wander with thoughts, just draw your attention back to your breath and back to your heart. When you're ready, you can begin to radiate the energy from your heart with every exhale. Just imagine this explosion of light bathing every single cell in your body. Perhaps you begin to feel some of the subtle vibrations as the cells vibrate with this divine frequency. And just draw the energy back to the heart with every inhale. Continue to radiate from your heart the love, the gratitude. Send that intention to the hearts of others, those in need, your community. Just allow the energy to come back to the source, feeding your body, feeding your essence with this pure love, this pure light, this pure divine frequency. And when you're ready, you can gently open your eyes and bring your attention back to the present. And just give yourself now just a few seconds to appreciate whatever internal sensations that you may have and may still be experiencing. You've just created what we call coherence, when your mind, emotions, and your heart, they all align, creating the most optimal physiologic energetic state. And this is what we're going to discuss in a matter of moments. So, this is one simple, effective technique that you can now have in your back pocket. We'll talk more about it, but very powerful, and it supports your physical, your mental, and your emotional well-being. Okay, so let's get back. Let's start discussing what these type of techniques are actually doing to our bodies. Okay, so put on your lens, your Medicinal Mandala lenses, okay, and let's examine the Biopsychosocial Model. I have no doubt that many of you would have heard of this term already. This is the gold standard in health. This is a fancy term to say we are each mind, body, and spirit. That social blue circle represents how connected do you feel to your environment? How connected do you feel to your community, to the world, to the environment, perhaps to God or to the universe? Whatever it is that you want to feel connected to, make no mistake, there's a science to it. And we are each part mind, body, and spirit. Okay? So what do we now understand through this biopsychosocial model? Number one, the mind is like a muscle. Okay, Dr. Sarah Lazar from Harvard, she took people off the street. She taught them very simple mental exercises, got them to practice for 20 minutes a day for 2 months, and lo and behold, MRI scans of the brain show that within 2 months, parts of the brain structurally change. Just like how your muscles will get bigger and leaner if we all go to the gym, and work out regularly, so does the brain. And the area that she was really focused on was the amygdala. The amygdala is the part of the brain that's involved in watching over our environment, both internally and externally. If the amygdala does not recognize something, it freaks out and it triggers the fight or flight, okay? The fight or flight response. And that is what causes us to get stressed and raises cortisol levels. The unfortunate issue is that although the amygdala was very important in our evolution and in our survival, in today's time, because of all the chaos that's around us and the technology, our amygdalas are hyperactive. So, it's like an itchy trigger finger. Now, when you practice these mental exercises, it was shown that the amygdala shrinks. It becomes less sensitive. So now when things happen to you when external stimuli come at you, you have no control over those, stressors, but yet your body will not physiologically react in the same way. You don't get as stressed as you used to. And it's not because you feel all light and fluffy in the head. It's because neurophysiologically, biochemically, you're now a different person. You're changing internally. Now, what's interesting about this is that subsequent research has now also shown that other parts of the brain, like the prefrontal cortex, those areas actually get thicker. The prefrontal cortex is involved in our intelligence, your ability to think logically, your foresight. It is the highest evolved part of our brains. Now, we understand this as neuroplasticity, right? But make no mistake, what we're saying is that these mental exercises not only, shrink and decrease the areas of the brain that are less evolved, that are really holding us back from our greatness. And yet it thickens the more evolved parts of the brain that's involved in our intelligence. When you start thinking about it, really, we're starting to understand that these self-regulatory techniques is really help facilitating our evolution, not only as individuals, but as a species. This is profound. Now, in addition to the brain, what else do we know about mindfulness and meditation? Dr. John Kabat-Zinn, many of you I'm sure have heard about mindful-based stress reduction therapy. This is the gentleman that brought mindfulness to Western medicine. And his initial research showed that when patients, he actually worked with dermatologists, and he showed that patients that had an inflammatory condition called psoriasis, and they were being treated with UV light therapy, he took a sample of these patients and taught them how to become mindful and taught them how to use their imagination to imagine that the light was really focused and directing to the cells, the diseased area of the body, and was using the mind as an adjunct to therapy. Lo and behold, the studies showed that the patients who were using their mind healed 4 times faster. Now, this was such a result, nobody could believe it. They repeated the study with a much greater sample size, and sure enough, the exact same results. The fact of the matter is, these exercises also boost our inherent regenerative capacity for healing. We heal faster. Now, why is this? The fact of the matter is, this is a big, complex conversation. There's multiple layers to this, and we can't even begin to dive into all the different layers. But let me just get right down to one of the most fundamental aspects that we do know. The fact of the matter is that when you practice these simple mental exercises, what you're doing is we're actually affecting the genetic expression. We upregulate the genes that are involved in our being healthy, and we downregulate the genes related to disease, related to cancer. Furthermore, I'm sure many of you heard about the telomeres, the caps on our chromosomes. They get shorter as we age, and they get shorter with stress. Eventually, when they get too short, the cells can't replicate any further, and that's when the aging process really kicks in. The fact of the matter is, again, these mental exercises actually elongates telomeres. It allows cells to replicate later in life, and in fact, the telomere length is the metric that we use to help us gauge how healthy are the cells. So it actually regenerates and boosts cellular health down to the cellular level. So what I'm trying to really impress on all of you is that we now have an understanding of how to hack into our own biology. We can heal faster. We become smarter. We become, we learn to deepen the human experience, which is really important for physicians because, one, we're dealing with the greatest mental health crisis within healthcare we've ever seen. And ultimately, we need to change the system because it's become so industrialized. We value productivity, we value lean quality management as opposed to humanity. So as we learn to deepen our human experience on an individual level, learn how to self-care, that will ultimately and undoubtedly ripple onto our patients. We'll create a more humane system of care. Now, what I really like about all of the science around mindfulness is that we're starting to learn the role of the heart. And I want to spend a little bit of time on this because this is new science that is a game changer. And it's a science that not only physicians need to understand, but it's something that the public can easily digest, which is really important when we learn how to, create best practices to tactically apply these techniques into healthcare. So, Dr. Roland McCready, he's the lead researcher for an organization called HeartMath. They've been studying the role of the heart in self-regulation for the last 3 to 4 decades. And interestingly, in the 1960s, cardiologists worked with neurophysiologists and neuroanatomists, and they identified that the heart contains brain cells. The same ganglions that are found in the brain are also found sitting on the heart. And in fact, it's not just brain cells. There's also the same proteins, the same synapses, the same neuropeptides, supporting proteins. The exact same structures and elements of the big brain are found on the heart. And in fact, we mapped it. We mapped all the ganglions in and around the heart. And as you can see, many of the ganglion are actually distributed around the orifices of the heart. Now, what does this tell us? Well, number one, it shows us that the heart can act and function independent of our big brain. Number one. Number two, this heart brain actually influences the big brain. It has a much more influence on the big brain as opposed to the big brain influencing the small heart brain. And number three, we also know that the heart has this interesting intelligence and that we can tap into this intelligence. Now, science is showing us that the cells, this little heart brain, functions in the exact same way as our big brain. It learns. It has short-term and long-term memory. There's neuroplasticity. It senses the environment. It reacts to the environment. And hence, there's this intelligence of the heart. Now, I hope to think that many of you recognize that success requires not just your intelligence, but your emotional intelligence. Where do you think the emotional intelligence comes from? That EQ. We're starting to understand that the heart plays a pivotal role. Now, let's look into this a little bit further. Okay, this is what we're going to now discuss is heart rate variability. Heart rate variability. So here are two graphs. The red graph on the left, you can see the x-axis is time, the y-axis is your heart rate. Look at how irregular your heart rate is. This is called incoherence. And this occurs when you are feeling frustrated, irritated, you're impatient, you're worried, you're in fear. As opposed to the right-sided graph, where again, in the blue, you can see a nice sinus rhythm. Your heart rate is increasing and decreasing over time in a nice rhythmic fashion. This is called coherence. Okay? This is happening when you feel appreciated, you feel calm, you're patient, you're confident. So what I am now telling all of you is that the rhythms of our hearts encode information that relates to your emotional state. If you are feeling angry, sad, impatient, your heart rhythms become very irregular, as opposed like you're feeling in the flow of life. You're feeling great. You're in love. You have a nice rhythmic heart coherence. Now, why is this important? The reason why is because these rhythms from the heart are then sent up to the brain. And in one area particularly called the thalamus is tasked with distributing information to the remaining brain, like particularly the frontal cortex. So if you're feeling frustrated and your heart rhythms are very incoherent, very erratic, when those signals get to the thalamus and then gets distributed to the rest of the brain, it short circuits the brain. You can't think straight. Imagine all the times when you're writing an exam and you got stressed. You can't even, answers just can't even come to you. Or if a preceptor puts you on the spot and it's just like you freeze, you can't even think. The reason why is because these heart rhythms have a profound effect on our ability to function. As opposed to feeling like you're in the flow of life, you can't do anything wrong. That's what we call, when it reaches the brain, it optimizes the neural function. We call this cortical facilitation. The areas of the brain that are affected by these rhythms include areas that are involved with foresight, decision-making, social awareness, your ability to self-regulate. Everything that we need as health practitioners, let alone just being good human beings. So this has a profound effect on how we function. And it goes even deeper. When you think about resilience, okay, what is resilience? The capacity to prepare for, recover from, and adapt in the face of stress, challenge, or adversity. If we think about ourselves as energetic beings, right, which we are, we need to learn how to best manage our energy. How can we best intelligently manage our energy? We are like batteries. We drain energy, but we can also learn how to charge up that life energy, build resilience, okay? Now, when you look at the science of performance, we know that over time, your performance will decrease. And it doesn't matter if you're looking at it within, a 6 or 12-hour period or over a number of days. This is an accumulative process. And what we understand is that just like any system, the more that you're working, the more energy that you're using, you're draining your energy. And if there's an imbalance, if you are not learning how to recharge, then your performance is going to profoundly be affected. So by learning, self-regulation skills like the laser protocol, by practicing these skills, as little as 20 minutes a day will really change your performance, and you'll feel it. I can talk to you till I'm blue in the face. You'll feel less fatigued. You'll feel more engaged. You'll feel more revitalized and engaged with everything that you're doing, because you're not going to be dragged down and exhausted. By practicing these techniques, it really taps into your potential. Okay. Now, I'm going really quickly, and I know there's so much to talk about, but I assure you, there's lots of opportunities to learn more about this, and I'll tell you about it near the end. But this is something I really want to stress for everybody, that we do have control in our self-care, which has a profound effect on our performance, on our patients, on our communities. Okay. Up until now, we've been really focusing on the red circle and the yellow circle, the body-mind, the mind-body connection. I want to just spend a few moments on the blue circle, that science of feeling connected to your community or connected to the world, to God, universal consciousness, whatever you want to label it as. How to feel connected. Now, again, the heart has been shown to play a very pivotal role in that science of connectedness. When you look at an EKG, you're really looking at the electrical current that's running through your heart. In fact, your heart creates the largest electrical field in the body. Okay? Why is this important? Because anything that has electricity flowing through it also creates a magnetic field. That's why it's called electromagnetism. So what I'm saying is that the heart is not just a pump. The heart is creating rhythms depending upon your emotional state. Those rhythms not only are going up into the brain and affecting your ability to function, but it's also being sent out into the environment through your magnetic field. How do we know this? Well, number one, because we can actually take magnometers that are sensitive devices that measures magnetic fields, and we can measure your magnetic field at least 3 feet from you. And in fact, we can perform spectral analysis to identify the very specific frequencies of energy within your magnetic field, and it will tell us with about 75% accuracy what emotion you are feeling in that moment. Okay? Now, what's fascinating is that your heart is not just emitting these waves, but it's also listening. Your heart is also a sensory organ. It's very sensitive to these electromagnetic pulses. And studies have shown that when you bring people together in a room, imagine you're in rounds in the morning, and you are now in a group, you practice the laser protocol, you get into that state of coherence, and imagine if somebody comes in and they have no idea about coherence. They don't know the laser protocol. They're completely oblivious to any of this. The fact is that your combined coherence levels will induce another person's heart into coherence. Do you know how important what we're talking about now? That your state of coherence, your ability to self-regulate and optimize your physiology also has a profound impact on other people, and you can help induce others into a state of coherence, which in return is creating a health benefit to them. The problem is that the reverse is true as well. Imagine the times where you were at a party and somebody walks in and you could feel their negative energy. Negative Ned just showed up, or negative Nancy. You're feeling this drain. If somebody's heart is in incoherence, you may be susceptible for your heart to also resonate with their irregular rhythm, which then drags you down. But the more that you practice, the more that you go to the gym and you're flexing your muscle regularly, that you are now protecting yourself from other people's incoherence. It's a protective mechanism. Your heart becomes more entrained with that particular coherent rhythm. The cool thing is that we have tools, real-time biofeedback tools that can actually measure our coherence in real time. So now, when you're training your heart and your mental muscle, you can actually track your progress over time, objectively measure your coherence. You can actually, especially if you're a beginner at all this and you want to know if you're doing it right, this will help you learn, to feel that inner sensation, when you accomplish that state of coherence. You can use these real-time biofeedback tools. And the interesting thing is this: these same devices that we can use for ourselves, if we use them as a group, if we all had one of these simple little devices and we created a group on an app, it would actually show us how our heart rhythms synchronize with each other when we focus on love and compassion for each other. Our biorhythms synchronize. And the device also can measure the global coherence. There's very sensitive magnometers that are now all around the world, and we are now studying how people's group coherence actually affects the magnetic field on a global level. This is what HeartMath has been doing. It's amazing work, and it's a game changer to understanding ourselves and our relationship to each other, but also it really helps lay the foundation for a new community health approach. Now, this sounds really awesome, but I want to also impart on how important this actually is, the implications involved. So, this is a graph from 1996, okay? And it was a journal article that was published in a peer-reviewed journal in 1999 based on this 1996 experiment in Washington, D.C. And basically, a group of meditators came together to Washington for 2 months during June and July, the hottest months, when the crime rate is at its peak. And they said that through a combined effort of focusing on love, compassion, and peace for the community of Washington, that violence, that crime rate would drop. And in fact, the police chief said, you guys are bonkers. We need 20 inches of snow during June and July to drop our crime 20%. They predicted a 20% drop. Now, as you can see, the x-axis is time, 8 weeks. The green line represents the coherence, creating group size. The number of people coming together in Washington to focus on love and intention with each other. The orange line represents the percent change in homicide, rape, and assaults. It decreased by 23% by the end of 8 weeks. And what's not shown here is that when people started to go home after 8 weeks, crime rate slowly rebounded right back to baseline levels. Now, it took 3 years for this to be published in a peer-reviewed journal because the scientific community refused to believe. They just thought there had to be, some sort of explanation. They just couldn't wrap their brains around it. Now, the interesting thing is that this has now been replicated over 30 times in peer-reviewed journals. There's been countless more, derivatives of this project, and this is a well understood phenomenon. And I would argue, what's the bigger phenomenon here, that this actually exists, or the fact that we haven't been talking about it over the last 20 years, right? Now, what I think is more interesting, we now understand the mechanics, the how we are connected. The bigger question that I want to just ask you all is, why? That's the big question. Why are we designed in this way? And the why really gives us a new vision, a new path forward. It inspires people once we learn the why. And this is really important because it relates right back to the biopsychosocial model of care. Now, Leonardo da Vinci, he was a pretty bright fella. He said, just learn how to see. Realize that everything is connected to everything else. And in fact, Nikola Tesla, centuries later, also said, if you wish to understand the universe, think of energy, frequency, and vibration. To help understand what these two gentlemen are talking about, I want you to stop now and just imagine yourself on stage. Imagine that we're having a huge festival celebrating this global consciousness, this understanding of our relationships to each other, and we're celebrating oneness. Now imagine that your favorite band is playing your favorite tunes, and we're up, we're celebrating, and you start to look at the entire crowd, 100,000 people. You'll notice that everybody has their own form of expression. Everyone's dancing differently. But yet you'd also recognize that everybody is synchronized to the same beat. It turns out that the universe is no different. Mother Nature is also dancing to a particular rhythm. Every flower, every leaf, every plant, every rolling wave is dancing to the exact same geometry, the same pattern. And it's that frequency that is identified in the Medicinal Mandala, why the vector and the lotus, why they flow into each other. We call this the Fibonacci sequence, the golden ratio, sacred geometry. I don't care what label you want to, call it, but it's more important that we learn to recognize it. Because from the spiraling arms of the galaxy down to our environmental patterns, every fruit, every vegetable, everything that we eat is all dancing to the exact same rhythm. I teach medical students anatomy. I can tell you that every aspect of our human existence physically is dancing to this rhythm. Every level. The fact that you can hear me, the fact that you can see these relationships, I want you to think about it. Because the next time you're eating a walnut, you can imagine that you're eating like a little brain. it's not just the physical world that this certain rhythm that everything is dancing to, but even how we perceive attractiveness. When someone's face meets that particular geometry, the more attractive they will be perceived by society. You see, this pattern, this frequency, this energy is what resides at the level of our subconsciousness, right? We're attracted to it. Now, by bringing that to the level of awareness, bringing it to a level of consciousness, it becomes very powerful. It becomes a tool that we can start to use. By recognizing this geometry, this pattern, it really helps us redefine who we are, not only as individuals, but also as a collective, a community. When we think about this geometry like a fingerprint, it really legitimizes Mother Earth. And in fact, when you think about it, our genes, when you look at our genetics, you, me, and everybody on this planet, we are over 99.9% genetically identical. We need to start thinking about us as a global community by expanding the perspective of what we understand to be life, either from a petri dish to a superorganism called a human, to even a greater superorganism called a planet. We start to better understand our relationships to ourselves and to each other, to the planet. And I'm sure many of you will, in a heart-centered way, really resonate with this message. The fact of the matter is, this is very important to include in the dialogue of medicine, because it's exactly why the biopsychosocial model exists, why it functions, why it's so important. That blue circle, we're all part of the same, we're all part of the whole. And in fact, the ancient scriptures have been talking about this for thousands of years. They say, look, we're each sparks of the same flame, which is a beautiful expression, because when you think about, your brain cells, every brain cell is a spark in the flame of your consciousness. And at Mother Earth's perspective, you, me, and everybody else, we are each sparks in the flame of Mother Earth's consciousness. The problem is, we've been living this illusion. Our systems, the way that we've created all of our economy, our politics, our healthcare model, it's all based on an old way of thinking that we're actually separate from each other. And the fact of the matter is, we're not. We're inherently connected. My health depends on your health and vice versa. And in fact, the more separated and isolated that we feel from each other, the more disease that we create for ourselves. And in fact, it's not just on an individual level, but we're starting to see the disease, affecting our communities. And in fact, it's killing our planet. We feel disconnected from ourselves. We feel disconnected from the planet, and we feel like we can do anything we want to this planet, all in the name of wealth. So, at the end of the day, I believe that by empowering people with knowledge, particularly helping people understand energy from a more balanced perspective, Western and Eastern, perspectives, that people can learn to not only better care for themselves, but how they can be connected to others. And when you encode this information within art, it becomes very infectious. Love is infectious. And we're starting to really appreciate what love does, not only to your physiology, right, that coherence, but what it does when you project it into a group, and a group of people also focus on those emotions of love and gratitude, compassion, what it does to our communities. And this is truly a foundation of what I call conscious healthcare. As opposed to a biomedical model that only thinks of us as, physical components, conscious healthcare says, no, we're much more than that. We're part mind, body, spirit. And in fact, the biopsychosocial model is another way of saying that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. So wherever you happen to be on that science and spiritual scale, I don't care if you're on the far end of science and you are all about, the numbers, let me study, the facts, Or you might be on the far end and say, you know, I don't need facts. I know that there's an inherent knowledge that I can tap into by tapping into my spirit, awakening my spirituality. Wherever you happen to be, this appreciation of energy helps deepen your experience no matter where you are on the scale. And it will help provide perhaps a little bit more, balance to your own life. So, as we come to the end, here are the 3 takeaways, okay? If there's 3 things I want you all to take away from this little conversation. Number 1, you got to practice, folks. Again, I'll talk till I'm blue in the face. Knowing that you can work out is half the battle. You have to practice, okay? How can we do this? There's multiple ways, okay? One easiest way that I found when I first started is in the morning. Create a little routine. Set your alarm 20 minutes earlier and just get up and meditate. Laser protocol, simple. Just do it for, even if it's for 5-10 minutes, but create a routine. During the day, if you need a break, go to the bathroom. If you just need a 5-minute, 10-minute break, just go to the bathroom and do your laser protocol. It's a great way just to recharge, to reconnect, get laser focused again. The other technique is what they call shift and reset. If you just had a difficult conversation, if you were on the phone, had a difficult encounter with a colleague or a patient, your cortisol levels are going to be high. You're going to be tachycardic, and the cortisol can actually stay in your blood for over 48 hours. If you do the laser protocol, or if you do any other technique for that matter, immediately what you're going to do is you're going to drop your cortisol levels. Your heart rate's going to drop. You're going to activate your parasympathetic level. The hardest part of all of this is to remember that you have these exercises, you have these tools in your back pocket to use. That's honestly the most difficult part. Once you get over the hump and you start practicing in the morning and you start using this during the day, it becomes second nature. Believe me, it'll just become second nature, part of your ethos of being, and you will feel so much lighter. You'll feel much more in tune, more socially aware, so much more focused. So shift and reset after a difficult moment. Do the laser protocol, even if it's for a minute or 2 minutes. It will have a profound implication on your biochemistry that will help calm things and keep you now reconnected, reset your mental state of mind. Ultimately, I would suggest, if you can, try to aim for 20 minutes a day. Even if they're at 5-minute blocks 4 times a day, just get into a practice. Certainly in the morning, I would suggest 10, 20 minutes, excellent. And I'm at a point now where if I miss my morning routine for whatever reason, I'll feel it during the day. I feel a bit more of this sharper edge internally, and I'm more aware of it. Now, the other aspect for practice, I invite all of you. I have an ongoing free meditation program, 6 p.m. every night. I'll provide details to Aaron. And this is a live group coherence. I'll help guide you into coherence. We do the laser protocol together. And there's people from around the world that are just coming together, 20 minutes. That's all it takes. And we just practice. We're practicing and connecting in heart with each other. So you can either connect through Zoom or through Facebook Live, but I'll provide the info to Aaron. Now, the second part. So the first part is you got to practice. The second part, the second takeaway is please continue exploring this conversation. There's so much. It's so fascinating. This is really the new chapter in healthcare. Self-care is patient care. So as a way to continue your learning, I invite you to a new YouTube channel I've just started. I've got lots of videos between 5 to 10 minutes. I call them energy nuggets, little nuggets of knowledge that explore these topics. We go a little deeper, and it just really helps kind of create a more comprehensive picture of the connection between the art and science of self-care, patient care, and what are the implications to our communities. And furthermore, how can we use it as a roadmap to create healthier communities both locally and globally? Now, in addition to the YouTube channel, I invite all of you, if you're interested, I've started a new energy elective, a medical student elective through McMaster University. It's either a 2-week program, and I think also now they're interested in having me deliver it also as a 1-week program. It's all virtual, so it's perfect during these moments and during the pandemic. And I'd be more than happy to be able to have all of you participate and really learn. I feel that the tokenism of mindfulness and meditation, we need this to be baked into a curriculum. We need to take this much more seriously. And I think this is, one opportunity where we can really dive deeper and not only learn about it intellectually, but we also practice all sorts of different techniques so that we can nurture the mind, we'll nurture the body, we're going to nurture the spirit. So I think it's great. And ultimately, what we learn in this elective, as Einstein said, future medicine will be the medicine of frequencies. And I hope as we scratch the surface in today's talk, that you start to kind of really start to understand, like, whoa, Einstein was really onto something. We are all energetic beings. We're all frequencies and vibrations. And when you start to include that perspective into our understanding of medicine, it really creates a more comprehensive approach to health and wellness. Lastly, share the knowledge, folks. Share it, please. It's our responsibility as healthcare practitioners to share knowledge, to help educate. And we know that education is the first step to being healthy. So please share the link, tell people about this elective, and just to let you know, there's a very exciting new project we're just about to start. I'm working with a public health nurse, and we're starting a new Instagram community. It's called Humanizing Healthcare 2021, and all of the content is created by community for community. So I'm inviting all of you. You want to share a thought, either a personal experience, maybe it's a new perspective that you've just gained that you're just fascinated with in regards to energy and heart coherence, and whatever it is that you want to share, please, I would love to hear from you. You can send it to a very simple email, humanizinghealthcare2021@gmail.com, and you can tell me if you want your name on it or not. You can leave it anonymous, whatever it is that you're most comfortable with. And then we're going to start sharing this with a global healthcare community and even beyond. And you're going to see, we're going to start having dialogue and conversations with other community members and other practitioners. So this is really an attempt to breathe life into a community for us to learn, heal, and grow together. That all said, I'm going to leave you with one of my favorite quotes. It is just no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. And I believe that's where we are today. So, that is the conversation for today. And I'll just open it up to any questions or comments or thoughts. I'll stop my share. Sorry. Let me...
I guess first off, I just want to thank you so much, Dr. Abrams, for taking time out of your schedule and giving us this very enlightening and perhaps energetic talk. But I think we all really appreciate it. If anyone needs to leave, it's totally fine. Or if anyone has any questions, go ahead. The CV hour is there. I'm going to stop the recording now.